Marriage is meant to stand on a foundation of trust. Yet sometimes the one person you rely on most is quietly pulling that foundation apart. One evening, I sat across from my wife as the pale light from her phone illuminated her face. Her fingers moved quickly over the screen, and there was a nervous tension in her expression. I asked casually who she was messaging. She gave me a small, almost forced smile and said she was arranging a trip. At first, I assumed she meant something work-related or maybe a personal getaway. But then she added something that hit me like an explosion. "I'll be traveling with Anthony." Anthony was not just a random name. He was her former lover. The man I had always sensed still occupied a hidden corner of her heart. My throat tightened. My heartbeat accelerated. And right then, I understood this wasn't simply about traveling somewhere. This was about commitment, boundaries, and the quiet destruction of our marriage. I remained seated, looking directly at her, waiting for her to correct herself, hoping I had misunderstood. But she didn't take it back. Instead, she repeated it firmly, as if announcing she would spend days, maybe even weeks, in close proximity to someone she once loved was completely reasonable. My wife, my partner, the woman who claimed I was her closest ally. She stared at me as though I was supposed to accept it without protest. Inside me, fury clashed with heartbreak, but I stayed composed. Years of endurance and compromise had taught me that silence can be more powerful than raised voices. Whether she realized it or not, she was pushing boundaries, measuring my reaction. I refused to let her see me unravel. Memories rushed through me. Every moment I supported her ambitions, every long shift I worked to provide comfort and stability, every sacrifice made to strengthen our relationship. All of it flashed before my eyes in seconds, and now she stood there reopening a closed chapter of her past with no consideration for how it would affect me. Did she truly think I would accept such blatant disregard? Did she assume I was too attached, too weak to challenge her? My heart ached, but my dignity spoke louder than the pain. When I finally responded, I didn't shout. I didn't plead. I didn't demand justification. I leaned back in my chair, held her gaze, and said only 2 words. "Don't worry." The calmness in my voice unsettled her. She tilted her head slightly, confusion creasing her face. She hadn't expected that reaction. But those 2 words carried far more than she understood. What I truly meant was this: don't worry about whether I'll still be here when you return. Don't worry about this marriage surviving your decision. Don't worry about forgiveness for the betrayal you're choosing. It was a simple reply, yet it struck harder than any heated argument ever could. For the first time in a long while, I saw uncertainty flicker in her eyes. She had anticipated resistance, maybe anger, not calm detachment. She hadn't expected me to look so steady, so prepared to let her walk away if that was what she wanted. That was when I realized restraint held more strength than rage ever could. She wanted to see how much influence she still had over me. With 2 quiet words, I showed her she had none. She attempted to brush it off with a nervous laugh. She said I was exaggerating, that it was only a trip, that she and Anthony were simply friends now. But her explanations felt thin, almost desperate. The slight shake in her voice betrayed her confidence. Deep down, she knew the line she was crossing. My calmness forced her to confront it. I didn't argue further. I didn't press the issue. I allowed silence to stretch between us, thick and suffocating. With each passing second, she began to realize my response wasn't casual. It was final. That night, sleep avoided her. I could hear her shifting restlessly beside me, her breathing uneven. I lay awake, staring into the darkness already mapping out what would come next. I wouldn't prevent her from leaving if she decided to go, but I also knew I wouldn't be waiting when she came back. My self-respect was worth more than staying in a marriage where I ranked second to another man. Her heart had already leaned elsewhere. I refused to compete for a place that should have been mine. The next morning, she approached me again, speaking more gently. She said she needed time away to find herself, that the trip would help her gain clarity. The irony nearly made me smile. She didn't need clarity. She needed honesty. She wasn't rediscovering herself. She was chasing a feeling she believed she had lost. And in the process, she was risking the stability and devotion I had worked so hard to build. I simply smiled and repeated, "Don't worry." This time, she didn't argue. She sat frozen, her untouched coffee cooling in front of her, her hands trembling faintly. By the end of the week, her suitcase stood ready, but the certainty she once carried had disappeared. Those two words echoed in her mind, forcing her to question everything. Perhaps I wasn't the one losing something. Perhaps she was, and she was right. The moment she stepped out that door with Anthony, I would step out of her life permanently. My silence, my control, my refusal to beg. It was the strongest declaration of independence I had ever made. In the end, she didn't leave. Quietly, she unpacked her belongings, avoiding my eyes. The burden of her decision weighed heavily on her shoulders. But something between us had already broken. Our marriage would never return to what it once was. Those two words, "Don't worry," marked the turning point. They were not merely a reaction to her near betrayal. They were a declaration of strength, of self-worth, of a man unwilling to accept humiliation. And even though she stayed in the house, deep down I knew I had already walked away.